Hey guys, welcome to another awesome video. If you have decided CCNP Enterprise Certification is for you, you have come to the right place. In today's video, I will go deep into the various CCNP Enterprise Certification topics so you have a pretty good understanding of the fundamentals and the skills you need to become CCNP certified. With that, let's roll the intro. Today, my goal is to talk about CCNP Enterprise Certification. Let's do a deep dive analysis of this certification. With that, let's go ahead and take a look at the mechanics of this certification. So the very first thing is achieving this certification means that you have skills for managing enterprise networks. And what does that mean? We'll get into those details when we look at the exam topics here. But first off, I want to bring your attention to a very important matter. And that is, to get this certification, you have to pass 2 exams. And one is the core technologies exam, and one is a concentration exam. Let me quickly touch on that. I'm going to skip through some of the detail here and take you directly to the exams we're talking about. Core exam is consistent of this cert right here, 350-401, ENCOR, implementing and operating Cisco Enterprise Network Core technologies. So that's a core exam. This is an exam that you must take if you want to become CCNP Enterprise Certified. This exam alone is not going to make you CCNP Enterprise Certified. You must take one of the concentration exams and look at, let's see how many we got. We got about 6 different choices to pick from. So what we can do is, if you're into hardcore routing and switching, then you should pick either the first option or the third option, because these are more in-depth routing and switching focused. If you are going to be implementing SD-WAN, or if you have a job where you're being tasked with evaluating SD-WAN solutions, or if you're an engineer hired to implement SD-WAN for your company, then the 300-415 certification would be the best fit for you. If you are a wireless engineer, then 300-425 and 300-430 would be excellent choices. And finally, if you are going to be in the new and hot area of automation, then you need to be looking at the 300-435 certification. So what that means is you pass the ENCOR exam first, and then you take any of the concentration exams, and then you become CCNP Enterprise Certified with a specialized focus in an area that is most relevant to you and your organization. That being said, a very important element that I would like to bring to your attention is the prerequisite. A big change this year in the CCNA and CCNP curriculum has been that you no longer are required to pass a CCNA exam to be qualified for CCNP. So you can bypass CCNA and go directly to CCNP. My recommendation to you is, if you have few years of experience under your belt, then I think you can totally skip CCNA. But I think for about 90% of the audience, you guys will be better served taking the CCNA exam first and then taking the CCNP exam. Because NA is a baseline. In when I get into the exam topics here, you guys will see that there's a lot of overlap between CCNA and CCNP. And that's not to say that you can skip CCNA, but that's to actually show you that once you take CCNA exam, CCNP is going to be a lot easier for you, because you have already covered most of those topics, at least at a high level in CCNA. And then when you walk into CCNP, you go slightly deeper, but you're not completely blind to those topics and they're not brand new to you. So that being said, let me scroll up and go deep into the ENCOR exam here. We click on ENCOR, click on exam topics, and what we do next is we go ahead and download the PDF document. First of all, it's a 120-minute exam. That's 2 hours. And as I mentioned previously in my CCNA video, you roughly get about 1.5 to 2 minutes for each question. Now, it might sound like that's too little, but trust me, guys, if you have ever taken any Cisco exam before, you would know that that's more than enough, because by the time you're ready to actually take the exam, because you go through so many different types of quizzes and exam prep solutions. In other words, you either know the answer or you don't. You really don't have to think much at that point. And if you really have to think hard, those should only be very few questions that are much deeper or more difficult topics, which is understandable, right? Let's examine this exam in more detail. So first of all, the very first section of this exam, 15%, that's the architecture. And what you would see is in 1.1, you will cover the basics of Tier 2 and Tier 3 design, fabric capacity planning, first hop redundancy protocols like VRRP, HSRP will go deeper here than CCNA, of course. And then the next topic is around the wireless LAN, which is 1.2. The one below that, 1.3, is on-prem versus cloud infrastructure. 1.4 is about SD-WAN, and 1.5 is about SD access. 1.6 is about wired and wireless QoS. 1.7 is the basics of Cisco Express forwarding, MAC address table, TCAM table, and that wraps up the first section. The second section of this exam is virtualization, and that's about 10%. Small percentage, but nevertheless important. Here we get to talk about differences between type 1 hypervisor versus type 2. What's a virtual machine? What's a virtual switch? We'll then talk about a VRF, which stands for virtual routing and forwarding. Then we get into the different type of tunneling technologies, and specifically we'll talk about GRE and IPsec tunnels. Then I will cover network virtualization, things like Lisp and VXLAN, and that wraps up the second section of this exam. Section 3 is the largest portion of this exam, and that's infrastructure. So here we'll discuss Layer 2 technologies. 3.2 is Layer 3 technologies, EIGRP, OSPF, your routing protocols. 3.3 is all about wireless. We'll get into the details there. And then IP services, things like NTP and NAT and multicast. And then you get into section 4, which is 10% of the exam, network assurance. And in this section, we cover a different type of troubleshooting and analysis tools like SNMP and syslog and traceroute and remote logging and NetFlow and IPSLA and span port. We'll also talk about Cisco DNA Center. And the next section after that is security. Here we'll talk about how to configure and verify basic level security on a router or a switch, different type of infrastructure security features like access control lists, control plane policing, REST API security, wireless security, network security design, right? So here we go into what I call defense in depth. So threat defense, endpoint security, next-gen firewall, TrustSec, MACsec, 802.1x. Finally, section 6 is all automation. 15% of the exam, automation is very, very important. That's an area that's exploding in the industry right now, and you will be best served if you actually got right into it during your studies for CCNP, so you're comfortable with how that works. So we'll talk about things like Python scripting and constructing a JSON encoded file and a Yang model, data model, and Cisco DNS Center and vManage APIs and REST APIs and RESTconf, embedded event manager, EEM, various orchestration tools such as Chef, Puppet, Ansible, and SaltStack. And that pretty much wraps up today's video. Hey guys, thank you for watching today's video. As you may know, I'm fairly new to YouTube, so if you could do me a huge favor and drop down in the comment below any type of content you would like me to cover in the future videos, and I would love to take that feedback and create content that is relevant to you so you can go out there and crush it. Hope you liked today's video. If you did, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.